According to the deepest equations of quantum cosmology, the universe is actively fracturing. Every microsecond, the fabric of space-time violently splits, generating an infinite number of parallel realities. For decades, science believed this many worlds hypothesis was just a mathematical ghost. But they were wrong. The universe isn't the only thing that fractures. You do too. The true horror of a branching multiverse isn't found out there in a telescope. It is found in the physical echo of your own survival. You remember the freezing, sterile air of the emergency room rushing over your skin, the blinding, chaotic flash of the overhead trauma lights. You remember the frantic, overlapping voices of the trauma surgeons fading into a deep, terrifying, underwater echo. You remember the sudden, crushing, unbearable weight in the dead center of your chest, the final, deafening sound of the cardiac monitor going completely flat. Absolute silence. You fall into the void. But then, you wake up in the recovery ward. The doctors are standing at the foot of your bed, completely speechless. They tell you your heart stopped for over 10 minutes. They call it a medical miracle. You shouldn't be breathing right now. You tell yourself you just got incredibly lucky. But as the days turn into weeks, the adrenaline fades and something else takes its place. A cold, heavy, suffocating numbness settles deep into your bones. You look in the mirror, and the eyes staring back don't feel like your own. Clinical psychiatry has a highly documented name for this terrifying phenomenon. It is called Cotard's delusion, a severe neurological misfire where the brain's visual recognition center violently disconnects from the amygdala.
Now, in these patients, what happens is you and I, we have this recognition area called fusiform gyrus. It recognizes faces, recognizes umbrellas, tables and chairs, sends the message to the amygdala, which responds emotionally. In these patients, the amygdala is normal, so they can see everything. They react to things emotionally, react to sounds emotionally. They laugh at jokes, for example. But when they see anything emotionally salient, like their mother, the message goes to the fusiform gyrus and recognized as a mother, but the wire that goes from the face area to the amygdala has been cut by the accident.
The amygdala is the engine of human emotion. When it goes completely dark, the brain stops receiving emotional feedback from the physical world. The patient looks at their own spouse or their own children and feels absolutely nothing. The emotional data stream is entirely severed. They look at their own hands and genuinely believe the flesh is rotting off the bone. It is not a hallucination to them. It is a mathematical certainty. The brain has calculated the lack of data and reached the only logical conclusion. I am already dead. Modern medicine treats the walking corpse syndrome as a tragic chemical anomaly, a broken circuit inside a fragile biological machine. But theoretical physics opens a much darker door. To understand what might actually be happening to these patients, you have to look at the foundational terror of quantum mechanics. In 1957, a brilliant physicist named Hugh Everett III realized there was a fatal flaw in the way humanity understood reality. Before a quantum particle is observed, it exists in a state of superposition. It is everywhere at once, occupying every possible state simultaneously. The old guard of physics believed that the mere act of looking at the particle forces it to choose one location. They believed human observation causes reality to collapse into a single, fixed outcome. But Everett looked at the math and realized the equations never say the other outcomes disappear. The universe doesn't collapse. It fractures. This is the many-worlds interpretation. Every time a quantum event occurs, every time you face a lethal branching probability, reality splits. Both outcomes actually happen in separate timelines. Decades later, physicist Max Tegmark proposed an unsettling thought experiment. Imagine a weapon hooked up to a quantum particle. If the particle spins up, the weapon fires. If it spins down, it clicks empty. A true 50-50 probability. If you trigger the machine, the universe immediately fractures. In one timeline, you die instantly. Your existence is permanently erased. But your consciousness cannot exist in a dead brain. Human awareness cannot experience non-existence. It is a physical impossibility. Therefore, your subjective awareness is permanently locked to the timeline where the weapon clicks empty. You are forced down the path of survival. You could trigger the machine 1 trillion times. To an outside observer, you are dead. But from your perspective, the weapon will simply misfire 1 trillion times in a row.
If Niels Bohr was correct, and only one thing happens, what you should expect to happen when you run this experiment is maybe you hear it go click, click, and then when it bangs, that's the last thing you'll ever hear. That's it.
Right.
Game over.
Right.
Whereas if Everett is right, since all outcomes always take place, there is always going to be one branch of the multiverse where you're alive, but that's the only one where you're aware.
This is quantum immortality. You are an absolute prisoner of your own survival. You can never experience the end. Sir Roger Penrose's research suggests the human brain utilizes these exact quantum processes inside our neural microtubules. If the many worlds hypothesis is real, the multiverse isn't separated by massive cosmic distances. It is stacked directly on top of us. Parallel realities occupying the exact same space. What happens when the timeline fracture is too violent? When the physical trauma of the near miss echoes across the microscopic quantum divide? What if Cotard's delusion is not a hallucination? What if it is macroscopic quantum friction? The patient isn't crazy. They survived the medical emergency in this timeline, but their neural network is still receiving the residual cross-timeline data bleed from the universe where they didn't make it. They are feeling the literal biological echo of their own corpse. Their brain is processing the mathematical certainty of a reality where they died on that operating table. Think about your own life. Think about the closest you have ever come to the absolute end. The severe illness you shouldn't have beaten. The infection that miraculously cleared up overnight. The massive piece of metal that missed your windshield by a fraction of an inch on the highway. You think you are the original version of yourself. You think you just got incredibly lucky. But the unforgiving math of quantum mechanics suggests you didn't. The original you died in that hospital bed. You just inherited their memories, the exact microsecond the universe fractured. And the true, suffocating horror of quantum immortality is that it never stops. It doesn't mean you stay young. It simply means you survive. You will survive every terrible accident. You will survive every incurable disease, while the universe continually forces you down darker, more improbable timelines. You don't get to rest. You don't get to simply move on. You just keep waking up, accumulating the massive trauma of 1,000 dead realities, forever. But what happens between that moment and the moment the psychological overload becomes too much to handle? The unexplained guilt, the unmistakable déjà vu. They are all part of a parallel universe, coming to collect.